So if in this case, we've got a brand new file, and so we have an initial session we need to put in where we're talking them through. Maybe they followed this link and we've done it with them over the phone, or maybe they did this last night and this morning when we got into work, we clicked on the queue, we pulled them out, we converted them to a client, and now we've decided to call them. So we're going to go to new and counseling. And here we are. I know this is a little confusing because it's my name everywhere, but in this case, you know, maybe it's you is the business advisor, and this is my company. I have signed up. Please note the initial new session, and we do have some help text here as well. This is the first session the client has ever had with the Los Angeles Regional SBDC. It is not the first session they've had with any individual advisor. This means if they have this first session today, they've never had one before, this is the initial new. If they had a session 7 years ago, that was the initial new. So right. There's in any given file, there's going to be one initial new session. Everything else, if it is a paid advising session for the advisor, is going to be a follow-up session. In this case, this is a brand new file. We've had this phone call with the client. So we have an initial new, and we're going to say, hey, we were on the phone for 30 minutes. And in this case, we're going to have about 15 minutes to put in our notes, kind of download what just happened over the phone, verify information that's in there. And this is something that oftentimes we skip over these fields, particularly if we've been doing this for a long time. But it is worth kind of reading what it is we're saying happened and going through it. In this case, yeah.
And the administrative for session type, that would be non-billable, any kind of admin work that isn't directly with the client, correct?
Absolutely. That's something we wanted to put in the file, but it wasn't advising.
Right.
It was administratively, yeah. Something that we wanted in there. We wanted a note about it, but it's not something that we're billing for.
Great.
Contact type, in this case, it was on the phone. Extraordinarily important. You know, we got to do this right. So most of these internal initial new sessions are over the phone. They may be face-to-face. You know, we'll see what happens. But either way, we say how it happened, and then generally speaking, what was the counseling session about? This is very important to the SBA. In this case, you know, I'm a pre-venture client. Maybe we were talking about, you know, starting up my business. And maybe a business plan, if I had to define what a secondary option is. So it's important to start out. My subject line, initial phone call with talented business owners. Perfect. And the language used, the funding source, typically, these are not entirely determined until the end of the quarter every 3 months. So we can tend to leave these with however they've been set for us ahead of time.
Right.
In terms of the center, most people won't be able to make this adjustment. This is more of an Emily and Sten thing. This will be kind of defined for you. And then very, very simply, we've got 5 questions. So we're going to answer them. You know, and we're not writing a book. We don't have to weave a tale. We just want to answer the questions. And so when we're talking about milestones, in this case, we're talking about grant milestones, not good things we want to achieve with the client.
Correct.
These are things we're paid to achieve for the client. So in this case, a new business start. This is one of our goals. This is one of our primary milestones that the grant asks us to do. In this case, you know, add our initial phone call with Stan Ensberg to discuss his new snow cone business on the pier. Analysis of the problem to be solved. The business owner is unclear what permits are necessary And we're also unsure how much money is needed to begin this business. Now, typically, if you're talking to a real business owner, there's probably a little bit more going on. Ideally, there's a
Right.
little bit more that went on in this phone call. But just what we want to be clear is that we're explaining what happened, right? This is when we look back, and it's not going to be us 4 years from now when we look at this client. We want to know what was going on. We want someone that isn't us to understand what was happening. That's really the idea here. Actions to be taken to solve the problem. Client is going to identify how much money they have on hand to start the business and begin to determine relevant costs. And so we've kind of decided, was there a problem? What are we going to do about the problem? And then follow-up actions taken by both the client and the consultant. Consultant to look up business permits necessary on the pier in Hermosa. Client to begin spelling correctly and filling in financial template for business startup costs. So we've kind of determined what is the goal with this client, with the milestone we're working towards. And this could stay, I mean, in my opinion, if this client is pre-venture, that milestone is going to stay there until they start. That's forever going to be our goal.
Another milestone, so that would be capital infusion.
True.
And,
yep.
And what other ones would be milestones?
If we're talking someone that is already in business, job creation, very important, is a big one. Particularly during the pandemic, job retention. Yes. You know, just the fact that you kept people on board would be an important milestone. One could also say sales increase. Now, it is not necessarily gold by our SBA program. It is something we track. But those would be really the big milestones, focusing mostly on business starts, capital infusion, and job creation. And not to say that those are philosophically more valuable. We're business advisors, do much with our clients. But those are the things the grants are expecting us to do.
Right. And if this session happened to be, let's say, an hour and a half, as opposed to 30 minutes, we would expect the notes to reflect that. So there would be more information in these notes to reflect the longer session.
100%. Yeah. You know, absolutely. If you're putting in a real long session, let's know what happened. Absolutely. And great. So we've got our time frame, we've got the kind of session. Again, you know, the first one always being initial, every one after that always being follow-up. We've answered our 5 questions. And now we have a few data fields down here that are used by individual centers. They are not mandatory. I'm going to save this. And lo and behold, here we are. We've got our brand new session all filled out, looking good.